For the past several months now, I have been working on an old sporterized 1903 A3 that I stumbled across in a local pawn shop. And my goal with it was to try to turn it into a rifle that resembled the great old hunting rifles from the past, a Griffin and Howe or Rigby, something like that. One of those classic custom hunting rifles from the 1920s, 1930s. A rifle that realistically I'll never be able to afford, but maybe, just maybe, with enough work and patience, I could take that old 1903 and turn it into something that at least resembled those, and more importantly, has the feel and handling of one of those rifles. Well, I finally finished it. And I'm going to let you be the judge of whether or not I succeeded on that one. As far as the looks, as far as the handling of the rifle and the feel, I know I got that part right. This rifle feels absolutely amazing. But before we go jumping off into the deep end on this one, let's talk about accuracy. Because I know that's mainly what so many of you care about now is accuracy. Tradition, looks, aesthetics. There we go. I like that word, aesthetics. The handling and feel of a rifle. Okay. I know for a lot of y'all that stuff's cute, but you couldn't care less about it because you only care about accuracy. And I say that because so many of the rifles today are ugly. Sorry. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And that's because y'all don't care about how they look, so many of you. You care about accuracy. Right, well, they cared about accuracy way back then, too. Back in the 20s and 30s and on. Colonel Townsend Whalen. Famous quote, "Only accurate rifles are interesting." Well, this rifle's accurate. And the day I got it, a lot of y'all that have been following the channel for a long time, y'all remember the day I brought it home. I loaded up some rounds in, carried it to the range right after that, and fired a 4-shot group that measured 1.6 inches. Just a generic load I put together with a 175 grain Nosler target bullets and IMR powder. And I got to admit, Colonel Whalen, I think he might have been right, because when I saw what kind of potential this rifle had, it did suddenly become a lot more interesting. So I brought this back home and I bedded the action to the stock and I free floated the barrel and I carried it back to the range and fired a 4-shot group that measured just over half an inch. It's an accurate rifle. And a lot of what's been driving me and my interests. By my thinking, I can't say how good or bad today's rifles are if I haven't tried the rifles that came before them. So I've been going further and further back trying the older rifles. And so far, I've been impressed by all of them that I've tried. When I got this rifle, I was working on a FN Supreme with a commercial M98 Mauser action made in the early 60s or mid-60s. It's a sub-MOA rifle. I've bedded the action on it, free-floated the barrel, and I've done very little load testing with it. Sub-MOA. I've got a pre-64 Winchester, a 1960 Winchester featherweight chambered 270 Winchester. It's a shooter. And it could be more accurate. I just can't bring myself to modify the stock. But if I free-floated it, the barrel, and bedded action, it would probably be even more accurate. Still a shooter as is, though. And then this one. Okay, now, I know all of the old rifles aren't accurate. A lot of them have been shot out, worn out, rusted out. A lot of them may have never been accurate the day they were made. But the ones I've tried so far, they've been just as accurate as any current production rifle. I've been impressed by them. And I'll be honest, I was not expecting that from this one. It surprised me. But that wasn't the only surprise I got from this rifle. There were two things that really surprised me while working on this project, besides the accuracy of this rifle. And the first was from this book here, The Modern Gunsmith, by James V. Howe, written in 1934. I figured if I'm going to try to make a rifle look like a Griffin and Howe, I might as well follow the advice of Mr. Howe on how to best do that. And when I was reading his book here, I realized nothing's changed. Well, we think we're advanced now. We think we know so much. Nothing's changed. I'm going to read a little excerpt here from one of the chapters. And he was talking about sporterizing military rifles, using the military rifles to learn gunsmithing, essentially. Which, keep in mind, 1934, so many of your rifles were former military actions. 1903 Springfield, which was Mr. Howe's favorite. Okay. He described the various rifles available, the 1903s, the Craig Jorgensen's, the Lee Enfields, the Canadian Ross rifles, and 303 British, the German Mausers, the Russian Nagants, all the same rifles, military rifles at least, that a lot of us still talk about today. And then he says, with all of this excellent fare, few will desire to go further. Still, for those with abnormal appetites, a new range of possibilities is available by fitting barrels of other calibers to these self-same rifles, such as the 6.5 and 7 millimeter, which are also world popular. We're still talking about 30 calibers and 7 millimeters and 6.5s. Nothing's changed. And at the beginning of this book, he talked about the kids now being so spoiled, they can just order anything and it just shows up at the house. They don't have to do any work for it or make it themselves or anything. Just go order it. Of course, he was referring to the Sears and Roebuck catalog, not Amazon. Nothing's changed. And that was the first thing that really surprised me. Now for the second. This part I didn't realize till I'd finished here, but it surprised me at what I was able to accomplish with just the most simple, basic stuff. Just simple tools and a piece of wood. Literally. I didn't need any specialized equipment here. I didn't need to go buy a bunch of parts. I bought a piece of ebony off of eBay for 12 bucks. A little block of wood. That's my fore-end cap here. And I just cut off the end of the stock with a saw, made an oak dowel out of some scrap I had laying around, drilled a hole in the end of the stock and the end of the ebony, and squared up the ebony and stock. And then I just used a dowel and some epoxy and put it all together and with some clamps and let it sit in the epoxy dry. That's it. Used part of that same block of wood for the pistol grip cap here. Nothing special. The recoil pad. I shaped this myself and added a 1/2-inch spacer to it. And I have not done the finished grind on this yet. And the reason for that is because I want to make sure that this rifle fits me absolutely perfectly. I want to make sure the link's perfect, everything on it's perfect. So I'm going to carry this out, shoot it, hunt with it. And then once I decided, okay, it's perfect, then I'll do the finish grind. Until then, I've got a little room to do some shimming or something to get it to adjust it. And that was the great thing too about this, as far as doing all the work myself or getting a truly custom rifle. I could make this fit me perfectly, and I could add the little touches I liked. For instance, the pistol grip. It was a little too vertical for me to start with, and I like a little more horizontal pistol grip. To me, a horizontal pistol grip points better. All right, so I did some shaping in here, and I added a little bit of a palm swell to it. But I can still wrap my hand completely around the grip and control the rifle. And for my hand and for me, this is just absolutely perfect. That was nice to be able to add these little touches. The checkering. Okay, for the checkering. And Mr. Howe described how to make your own checkering tools. Okay, I didn't go that far. I did buy my checkering tools, but I already had them because I'd bought some checkering tools to redo that FN Supreme stock that I mentioned earlier. And so I had the tools on hand for the checkering, and I made some mistakes in the checkering. I don't have the level of skill as the craftsman that made those rifles that I talked about earlier. But even with my limited skill, just with patience and persistence, I was still able to do something I'm proud of. And checkering, it's as simple as it can be. It's literally scratching lines in wood. See it? But as simple as that is, it is maddening and it is absolutely tedious. Fortunately for me, someone else had done the metal work on this. So they had polished the metal, the barrel, the action, the bottom metal, and they'd polished the bolt. And then they did the bluing, and they did a great job. Now, there were imperfections in their work, just like there was imperfections in my work. And if you look at this closely in person, you can see that. You can see some places that were missed in the polishing and some variations in the coloring and the bluing, but they still did a great job, especially for most of this being done by hand. And they did an outstanding job on some of the woodwork. This pistol grip was spliced into the stock. This was originally a straight stock. And then they spliced in another piece of wood to build the comb up. And they did just an amazing job on the fitting on this. And I think they followed the same guide I did, because there's a chapter in here specifically on fitting a pistol grip, splicing it in, exactly how this one was done, along with things that you can do for the comb. And it was for specifically Craig Jorgensen and 1903 Springfield rifles. So yeah, someone else followed the same guide I did. And this just turned out amazing, at least for me. And I think the reason this looks so good and turned out so well is because this is timeless. I mean, seriously, literally. I used an 88-year-old book as a guide for what to do on a 119-year-old rifle design, with this specific rifle being made 80 years ago. And then someone else in this rifle's history used the same guide, and it came out looking like this. This is timeless. And if we want to take that even further, how long have humans been fitting stone to wood? As long as there have been humans. And then the stone eventually being replaced with bronze, and then replaced with iron, and eventually steel. This is timeless. Using stone to sharpen steel, and then using the most basic of tools, mallet and chisel. Using these simple basic tools to make even more complex and beautiful tools, hunting implements. Scratching decorative geometric patterns into the wood. This is timeless. But sadly, and this is so sad, a lot of you now, if you were to look at this rifle in person, you wouldn't be impressed. You would see the imperfections in this, and you would somehow think of this as being inferior to what's now, to what you have now. And that's because so many of you now don't recognize craftsmanship. Everything you've ever seen has been made completely by machine. You don't even recognize handwork anymore. You don't recognize a fine hunting implement made by the hands that are carrying it, that are wielding it. You haven't seen that. And I think that's a sad statement as far as where we're at now, that so many of us, we have no concept of craftsmanship now. And I almost missed it myself on this rifle. I almost didn't see it. But I am so thankful I did recognize it. And then I say that about so many of you not recognizing craftsmanship. And I say that because, I know that, because this rifle literally sat on a rack in a pawn shop with a hang tag on it for $299, less than most scopes now. And it sat there collecting dust because nobody recognized the craftsmanship in it, and nobody else could see the potential of what this could be with just a little bit more work. That's a sad state. This is one project I'm really glad I took on. It was time consuming. Before any of you start considering such a project, I want to be up front. This was very time consuming. This took a long time. I went with a boiled linseed oil finish over top of stain. Just the boiled linseed oil, I've got 6 weeks in that. Yeah, took a while. And it wasn't that it took long to apply the boiled linseed oil, it just took forever for it to dry. So, yeah, something like this, you got to have patience. And because it takes so long on such projects, I've got videos strung out for the past year with several of them, this rifle and several of the videos. So I'm going to leave some links below to those videos for any of you that are just interested in this particular rifle and some things I've done to it. And in the future, I'm going to take some of the various videos and put them together in groups, playlists, so that, for instance, the FN, there's several videos scattered about with it. And the reason for that, okay, it's tough to know how to organize a video and title it. Okay, when I bedded the action on this rifle, I did the FN Supreme at the same time. Name of the videos, bedding and action, part 1 and 2. And then I fired both after I bedded them at the range and showed the before the bedding and then after the bedding. So the name of the video is Accuracy Before and After Bedding. Well, that makes sense for someone that's interested in accuracy before and after bedding. But for someone that's interested in this particular rifle, well, you would never know this rifle was in that video. All right, so that's part of why going forward I want to start doing projects and just naming it whatever project. And then all of the videos, that whatever we do to a rifle during a project, it's whatever project, and it's what we do to the rifle. All right, so that way everything for a particular rifle is all together. And even then, we're going to run into some things. It takes a while to do this stuff, and we never know what we're going to run into. And a great example is that 257 Roberts featherweight. Okay, I wasn't counting on running into the things I ran into with it. And for it, just complete side note here, a lot of you suggested that I rebarrel it. Okay, I really don't want to rebarrel a rifle like that. That's a very rare rifle. It's probably going to be very collectible one day. It already is. Again, it's just such a rare rifle. That caliber made in that year, yeah, there aren't many. All right, well, that's what makes specific rifles collectible. And the last thing I want to do is go rebarreling one. All right, you just completely destroyed its value then. Now, if it was just a plain Jane 308 or 243, not that there's anything wrong with those cartridges. It's just they're not rare. Okay, now if it was one of those, okay, rebarreling is a great option. Which I still, there are other options to explore yet. So I'm not to the point of ready to rebarrel anything, but especially that one. And, okay, speaking of value, these old military rifles. It was really popular sporterizing these at one time. When you bought a Rigby, it was a sporterized Mauser 98's what it was. They reworked everything, but that's what it was. Same thing with Griffin and Howes from 1920s and 30s. When you bought a Griffin and Howe, it was a sporterized 1903 Springfield. Right, so sporterizing is nothing new. It's just with these rifles being so old now. If you found a 1903 Springfield or a 1903 A3, or especially a 1903 A4, those rifles are almost always worth significantly more in their original military configuration with all of the wood handguards and stuff. If you go altering one of those and sporterizing it, you just took a rifle that was worth $1,000 or more and turned it into a $299 budget rifle. So yeah, you destroy the value quickly. Same thing for the Lee Enfields and so many others. All right, so if you want to work with a sporterized military rifle like this, there are many out there to choose from that have already been sporterized, just like I did with this one. And if you've got one in pristine condition and its original military configuration and you want to modify it, that's up to you. It's your rifle. I would just, myself personally, there's no way I would. And again, it will definitely destroy the value of it. So Lord willing, we're going to be at the range next weekend, get load testing done on this. And I wanted to thank all of y'all for your comments and suggestions on cartridges and rifles for future projects. I'm way behind on answering questions and replying to stuff right now. I apologize. Just ain't enough time in a day sometimes. But I have read all of them, and for the questions, I will get back to y'all on those. And as far as the suggestions, I saw some good ones there, so I'm looking into availability of ammo and that type thing, and getting together a game plan for some of that. Some great suggestions there. So God bless, and y'all have a great day and have a great week.